Okay, welcome everyone to Imperial College. My name is Michael, and we'll be presenting with my colleague Igor Baranov. This is a seminar presented by us. You can see the Centre for Languages, Culture and Communication. We are, however, in the Imperial College Business School, and thank you to them for hosting this wonderful event. Thank you for joining us in person, online, both live and watching the recording afterwards. We hope this is going to be useful. So to introduce why we're doing this seminar, Igor and I both have some experiences we'll talk about, and we've been having casual conversations with colleagues at our department as to what they might find useful and things we can contribute to their career development. And it got to the point where we thought, well, instead of discussing lots and lots and lots of times with lots of people, we'll just run a seminar on this, and we put it internally, departmentally, and then people from outside the university were interested too. So we thought, why not? More the merrier. And here we are today in the business school. So we've got three sections of our talk today and plenty of time, hopefully, for a Q&A. So I'm going to talk about consulting as an academic, specifically Imperial, but it's meant to be transferable to any higher education institution, and give two examples. Then I'll pass over to Igor. We talk about corporate learning, a term with which you may not be familiar. And in fact, you may not be familiar with the scale of the activity and how interesting it is. So look forward to that. And then we'll talk about developing your own value proposition for developing your work, who might be interested in it, and how you get it in front of them, as it were. Okay. So, academic consulting. So, by training, I wrote a PhD on the history of science and technology about 9 years ago. And so, immediately when I go into a new topic or a new sector, I become fascinated by its history and predecessors of the activity that I'm doing. So this is not meant to be comprehensive by any means, but I just became intrigued as to academics, either in full-time posts at universities or with academic training moving on to other sectors. And here are a few examples. The first one's the famous example, Arthur D. Little, spun out of MIT as a chemistry research business as early as the late 19th century, I believe, then particularly growing in areas like operations research and becoming very influential as such. It still exists, they still have a building there with the inscription still on it at MIT. In the middle in Britain, probably the earliest example I can find is Charles Myers, who invented the term shell shock just after World War I. The psychologist from the University of Cambridge. He then span out something called the National Institute of Industrial Psychology, which I believe he did full time. And the NIIP lasted well into the 1970s. I know this because I've consulted its very extensive archives at the London School of Economics. And they were interested in applying one specialism, psychology, to industrial problems. And hundreds and hundreds of clients. You can go through all the archives and analyze all of this. You can even read a chapter of my PhD on this. What problems were they solving and so on. That's a particularly interesting one. And then one I found very recently in the Churchill archives in Cambridge is Mark Abrams, a famous sociologist. He was working on how people project the future in 1970. And I was looking at, he was, I believe, also a full-time Cambridge academic, span out a side business from this, which then applied for funds from what was then the Social Research Council, which paid for my PhD, incidentally, and they would then bid for government funds through this company, and they would win these bids and then go on to develop fascinating work on the sociology of how people think of the future. So there's just a few examples of both the content, the academic discipline, which is what academics tend to think about, and also the kind of organizational form that you can take. You can be full-time in the university, perhaps do a bit more, or you can take the training and be full-time somewhere else, or come up with a combination of those various factors. So I know everyone at this event today is interested in this topic. I just want to go through from experience some areas that you may not have thought about that could enrich your experience, your career, your skills. Something I found that I didn't anticipate when I started on the case studies I'll present in a moment was how much energy I would get from working in a different context. Yeah, like everyone working for quite a long period of time in any sector or institution, one can become institutionalized, and going somewhere else to different buildings to work with different material, different people with a different way of working, as I'll come on to, can be really exciting and energizing. And it sure was for me. And I'll talk that through in a minute. Learn new sectors. I mean, it depends what project you're on, but if this is a project that can last months or years, you really can go into a deep dive in a sector about which you may have known very little. and suddenly you know an awful lot. And Charles Myers, NIIP, they were deep diving with a staff of about 20, I think, on a daily basis into all different sectors, and not just factories, but the post office, the public sector, and all kinds of military areas as well when World War II came along. And as I say, working with different kinds of people can get you to different working styles and patterns, which it's fun to work with these people, and also can enrich your own working style. It certainly got me used to working with fewer parameters and having to define projects much more clearly myself. To enrich your academic work and skills, you can the skills and experience you develop in the field, as it were, can come back into the university. Certainly my students, some of whom are here today, have, I believe, enjoyed hearing about this from me, and that's great to hear. As I say, you pick up the appreciation of different sectors. This word currency, this perhaps is the most important thing I want to talk about, what experience you gain. Like any sector, academia has a currency to it. It revolves around certain teaching metrics and certain research metrics, often funding, impact, and the ranking of certain journals and so on. And this currency even takes on the language of being the only currency that exists through words like excellence and quality. Yeah. Now, every sector has its concept of excellence and quality, and they're mostly different from academic ones. And it can be very liberating and enlightening and humbling to realize how much the world exists out there. That's very different definitions of how the world works and what constitutes things going well in any particular project. Yeah, and it makes you think very, very carefully and critically in a positive way about how academia works as well. In many academic analyses, impact, I just mentioned, is on there. This is a way of helping you develop experience of how you get impact, often at a very deep level. Unfortunately, for the purposes of how academia reports impact, some of the experience you will gain, you cannot report in your academic impact studies because it's not public knowledge. We'll come back to this. And I'm sure everyone in the room, online, recorded, whatever, thinks they're excellent at multitasking. Aren't we all? Only when you're working in two completely different sectors do you really realize what multitasking is, when the work itself has a different goal and different styles, different people. And it can be very, like I say, very liberating, and help people to really, in a good way, to flexibilize their working practices. They become very dynamic. Now, this one's obvious, and we'll talk about this when it comes to value proposition and essentially marketing, sales, and so on. You do generally meet people, in a similar situation, perhaps. They make great contacts. I was speaking with one of mine yesterday about what I'm going to present in a minute. And they go on to do cool things. You meet people working at the grey areas and the edges of things, on the frontier, as it were. And the people are often also in a similar kind of mindset. You can be really good contacts. It could be 5 years later. I enjoyed working with you on this project. I've got this new one. Do you want to join in on this one too? Yeah. And if you're working very closely together for a long time on these weird and wonderful projects, you will find you probably form quite a strong bond with them, to use a sociologist term, strong bond. And also, again, related to impact, to access policy debate. If the money's coming somewhere from the government or the government cares, you'll probably get involved in policy discussions to make positioning papers and things like this. You may not get credit as the author, which is I'll come back to in a minute. Now, we're all here also because, we might get paid extra to do this. There are qualifiers around that, but I'll talk about that a little bit more now, because this, I think, is really important that Igor and I have been talking about at length to present to you today. Is, okay, I've got the willing, I've got the knowledge, I've got the skills, I know what I can sell, but I don't know how to make that final connection. Yeah, and I'll tell you now, that's, to me, the hardest part. Doing the work once you've won the business is much easier than winning the business. Yeah, and the thing, Igor here, who has more corporate experience than me, as he'll outline, I'm sure, would contest this simple comparison I've made here, I'm sure, but it was useful to me and it may be useful to you, is essentially, where is the money coming from? Who is at the top of the decision-making list within a big company, and how does that shape what my product is, what my service is, the language, the kind of the debates I'm fitting into, yeah? And you see, currently, something I've been working on is being run directly by the CTO and the Chief Technology Officer and the Chief Operations Officer's office. There's a lot of those. And that is a project which is ongoing, so I'm not going to present it right now. But Whereas, and that could be things like topics like strategy, planning, project management, certain aspects of research, probably more quantitative, not necessarily. Whereas if you're looking at issues related to more the people function, as it's sometimes called, to do with more training, legal aspects of employment and so on, ultimately your boss is the head of HR. Again, Igor may want to refine that further. And that, it helped me understand where I'm going to fit into this landscape, because it also helps me understand who I'm going to be cooperating with and working with. Yeah, and I fall into this category here for sure, because I work on stuff that's pretty quantity as historical topics go, and very goal-orientated, strategy-orientated, and very long-term. And some of you may be more interested in working in the kind of people function. Now, this is something that this would come down to kind of career coaching, which is not precisely the point of today's exercise, but it is great to earn extra money, though you do have to work out your costing, because when you get paid in a job, there's often a bunch of other stuff you get as well that you may not think as pay. So pension, sick pay, and so on. And so you might look at your hourly rate and then look at consultancy hourly rate and think that consultancy rate is much higher than mine. But of course, someone may be pricing in lots of other factors like pay, holiday, pension, and so on. And they might be renting an office, they might have equipment costs, they may have personnel costs, and that could all be included in this. It could be why the pricing seems so much higher. So just be comprehensive about this. And I'm no expert on this, and I'm learning more about it because I would love to be. And then something that I'm sure you're familiar with, just in case not, you can see at the bottom of the slide, is the concept of the opportunity cost. If you're writing reports to clients that the public doesn't see, you're probably not writing academic studies that the public and your promotion panels will see. Yeah. So if like me, you've got a finite amount of time, you have to work out what's the priority here. Yeah. And one could analyze this and you say, well, okay, if I'm writing so many fewer academic papers in 5 years and therefore not getting promoted as much, how much extra pay do I need to earn from consulting to offset the promotion I'm not getting? You understand where I'm going with this, yeah? Or it could be you're looking at this from an experience widening perspective and pay is a priority. But I'm just saying this is the kind of thing you need to think about. Now, I'm keen to show you a few things, but just to keep in mind, working patterns can be very different. People talk a lot about the speeding up of academic work since neoliberalism, so 1980s usually. However, colleagues of mine coming from the finance sector talk about how slow academia is by comparison. We're talking like a day compared to months to write a report. I know that academic report would be much more thorough and have different sources, but there it is. You often find the client doesn't know what they want, which is why they're talking to you. It sounds strange for a client to want something that they don't know what, and I'll tell you exactly an example of that in a minute. And then suddenly you find you put in a proposal, maybe even a tender, which is unusual. You put in a proposal with somebody, you hear nothing for 10 months, then that issue becomes top of the news agenda that day. You get the phone call that day, and you've got to finish the thing by the end of next week. 6 days is my fastest turnaround time, Thursday to the following Friday. And that I had put the thing in months before. Right, and it was, you just need to bear this in mind when planning the work. Now, professional working style. You might have to sign things called non-disclosure agreements or similar confidentiality agreements. I know NDAs have a rather sinister reputation in certain areas. I would just think of it as if, someone's paying you money to do something. Why would you let them put it publicly availably on the internet? You might be able to put something about being able to put an anonymized case study in there, just so you know. Yeah, so then you can produce something, but not in detail, not naming the client, specific work. And there are complex issues to do with intellectual property protection. It depends what sector you're working in. And there are ways of grappling with that important issue, as I'll point out in a minute. And as I mentioned, academia is a sector that is no kind of better or worse in terms of its behaviors, perhaps, but it's certainly different. It can feel kind of slow. It has a certain currency of excellence and quality, which is not the same as other sectors. And the projects, as I say, can feel suddenly compressed. Now, this is also, I would say, it depends what field of academia you're in. Particularly arts, humanities, social sciences tends not to be solution-orientated. Right? You go to a conference, Okay, at the end, no, people tend not to say, and here's what you should do differently as a consequence. They often say further research is needed, ... Yeah. And I would say when people are, bringing you in to do this kind of thing, they want actionable solutions, and you to spell out how to action them, when, how much it will cost. You might even have to produce 2 or 3 and anticipate the client not knowing this. Just say, well, I've been immersed in your organization for ages. I think you need a menu with 3 options. This one, this one, this one. Here's a sense of cost, ideally 0. And here's a timeline. And most people are pretty dynamic. They'll understand you can't necessarily be too rigid to it, but it gives you a sense of scale. And in academia, the idea, really, 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 that could be to distill academia to its essence, that the academic publication counts as mission accomplished. Something's finished when it's published in a journal. Nobody has to read it. It just has to be published in the journal. Yeah. Now, I think this focus on impact and dissemination and public engagement is doing a great job there, saying there are next steps after that. Yeah. So I'm going to talk you through some quick examples here, and then we'll pass over to Igor to learn about corporate learning. So this was some years ago now, and in fact, it's the first project I did in this sense, and it gave me, I happened on this by accident, and it gave me a real sense of the possibilities here. But I've had to develop this over 9 years. I'm compressing into one short seminar here, one short talk. So this was a legal project with a global law firm. This is the kind of the level of detail, which is not much, you're allowed to disseminate about this kind of thing. Yeah. And sometimes there'd be nothing you could disseminate. So this is pretty good. So global law firm, that's a big thing for those who don't know. Those who've seen Suits, it's one of the ones with the big buildings, yeah, in many countries. A 1-year research project that varied across that time period. I put this picture here from the New Zealand National Archives. It had nothing to do with New Zealand, but here it is anyway. Just to give you a sense of what going through loads and loads of old papers feels like. And as I say, this one here is very rare in my experience, where this is openly advertised with tender. Yeah, if you are you skilled in this, please contact us. There was one sentence in something I spotted. And then I phoned them up. They didn't know what they wanted. They couldn't disclose anything to me because they're a law firm and they were working on a legal case. They just wanted me to propose something they could take to their boss. I then heard nothing for a long, long time. And then they phoned me up. What it transpired, this is what I would call a smoking gun evidence case. It was, we do not know what has happened and we're being accused of something. And as I say, there were key issues. So they know what the problem is we need to win a case. We don't know how to solve this because we don't know whether it's true. The key issues were over digitization, right? None of this anymore in the big skyscraper. M&A, mergers and acquisitions. So you've got companies taking each other over a lot, and all the papers being, well, not all, a lot of papers being lost by accident usually, or we don't need this, shredded, moving from one place to the next. And then what I call memory decay, but organizational memory decay. The people, high turnover of staff, and it was a long time ago, so very few people still in post. It was fascinating to learn about law, where research is not considered something a top-level person does. Yeah, research, professors at universities still do research. In law firms, that's an entry-level job, doing research. It's really striking to notice where research fits into the ecosystem of each sector. Yeah, and you can read more on there. The answer is I did find the smoking gun when it comes down to it. The case was very public. I'm not going to tell you which one it was, and I'm sure my work was very useful to in deciding what to do about it. Case study 2, defense projects. This one was much beefier. It took a lot more of my life, and was probably the majority of my job for some time. And I ran this by the project manager yesterday to check what it is I can convey in a public meeting like this. Yeah, I'm sure it's not just commercial privacy here in the defense sector. It's of course national security issues. So if anyone's listening from the powers that be, I did get this cleared. So several projects across a 4-year period, real meaty ones, working sometimes full time, almost. Yeah, contracted through a third-party consortium. So we're talking 4 or 5 people maybe at the same time. They're hard to run, but they're great fun. Working with engineers, policymakers, management, academics, and military veterans. And this is a classic consortium for the CTO, COO section I pointed out earlier. You would unlikely get these people working with HR. Yeah, but so I found it useful if I had to work with several people who would, what kind of specialism would they have? That would also be a good useful exercise for you. Two projects with the public sector defense, one with a defense supplier and one with a kind of policy thinky tanky organization that we wrote a big paper for. And actually, as part of that, it really helped me develop my research supervision in my university teaching as well. Because of the way it was run, it was really efficient. You can manage projects with very large groups of people. And that was similarly, again, primarily novel research using archival material. And the person I spoke to yesterday said, Michael, still, some years later, these do get used. Right? So I wrote lots of things that none of you will ever see until it's open in the National Archive in 20 years, maybe 18 years. And you can go and study in there. I'm just finishing writing up the case study of that. And then finally, just some points to make, some links. So if you're employed here at Imperial College or any other university, there will no doubt be registers of external interest, conflicts of interest, annual policies and so on. And there's very thorough documents there that I've linked through also at the end. I put finally down here, because I wrote my PhD partially on the management consultancy sector. And these are, I would say, the two bodies of organizational knowledge about the sector. The MCA, which is a corporate membership organization, and Source Global Research, which is a very dynamic organization of about 50 people. Its head, Fiona Czernianowska, has a PhD in history. And I contacted her through that. It was very interesting to learn about how she developed subsequently to run in this big research firm. What's interesting in this, I've been speaking to particularly Source about this, is within the body of research on consultancies, historically and now, small consultancies, academic ones, freelancers, it's very understudied, right? That's why I've had to present this in primary, like my experience. I'm an oral history source, as I would call it, right? I have not cited any papers because it's very hard to find. The literature is vastly on very big consultancies and what they've done historically now and are thinking about in the future. So we're in a bit of a, as I say, an exciting frontier area. And I will now pass over to Igor Baranov, academic extraordinaire, and he's going to tell us all about corporate learning.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Michael. I guess this is an excellent example of how to translate expectations. Yeah. Okay, well, I've actually been involved in corporate learning for the last 25 years. For the first 15 years of them, I also did my academic career, being an assistant professor, then associate professor of economics. And I've been involved in various capacities. Well, first as an academic director for a program of some Scandinavian companies operating in Eastern Europe, then as a director for executive MBA program, as a consultant at McKinsey, as a vice dean of one of the corporate universities, and currently doing projects in corporate learning for some retail and technology companies here. So, but what I actually saw over this 25 years is a quite rapid evolution of the sector, which I guess nowadays is way more open for academics, for cooperation with academic people. And well, let's have a look why. What happened actually, and in which way we see opportunities for academics now. The traditional way of doing corporate learning is having an L&D, learning and development union, inside the HR, probably very small formal learning. I mean, formal programs or courses, like 10% of all time devoted to that versus 70% learning from experience and 20% learning from others. Learning mix was towards mandatory training and ad hoc learning opportunities, mostly requested by employees themselves. And I would say, probably the most important feature of this traditional approach is very passive position of the learning and development people, saying, okay, your business, you know what you need, just tell us what kind of a program or course we need, to deliver, or better, to which program we need to send you people to. And we'll do that. So kind of a transactional business. It changed a lot, nowadays, as you will see. So reliance on external training companies, business schools, executive educations, like executive education that we have here, In most business schools, it was focused on open enrollment and customer programs. Customer programs were not really that much customized, actually, just versions of the same open enrollment for particular companies. So what changed? Well, first of all, learning at scale. Nowadays, we need to provide learning for almost all employees and on a regular basis. So if we just look at best practices in some companies, you'll see that average number of courses taken in 1 year is between 2 and 3 per person. Well, courses might be different. Some of them are half a year long. Some of them probably will take you 1 day. Still, this is the intensity with which we need to provide learning in the fast changing environment of business. So, in addition to that, we need to provide reskilling opportunities because, it's way more important nowadays to reskill people who already know your company, your environment, your customers. They belong to your corporate culture. Reskill them to the new professions rather than get rid of them, and hire new people and go through the whole, cycle of gaining experience for them again. Learning is a key retention factor. Especially for some professions. So I worked a lot with IT people over the last 6-7 years, and believe me, when you ask them, there are lots of surveys in many companies. When you ask them what is actually important for them, and for their tenure in a company, the average tenure, by the way, is around 2.5-3 years only. So they join company for this period of time on average. And they want, of course, get access to the best, cutting-edge equipment or models. They want, some advice from experienced mentors. They want flexibility in their way of working, hybrid, for instance. But one of the most important things, always in top 5, sometimes in top 3, is learning opportunities. Opportunities to get some knowledge, not only in IT, but also in business, in soft skills. Some certifications that will allow them to put this experience in their resume, their CVs, and, just, move further with, this, confirmed experience. So there was a shift from the 70-20-10 rule, which was established back in 1960s, towards a way more realistic rule that at least 20% of all training should be formal, means you actually enroll people to a course or a program. And there is an expectation, since we are not talking only about leadership team who are interested mostly in leadership skills, strategy, business school stuff. Now we need actually to provide learning for IT guys, for commercial people, and so on and so forth. So the expectation is that executive education units at universities should not only be a gateway to a business school of this university, but a gateway to the whole university. And I should say at this point that Imperial executive education team does absolutely great job of doing exactly this. And this is how they gained a competitive advantage of the market. So I've been working with them for the last, I guess, at least 5-6 years. And they're really good on that. And not so many universities, even top universities, can actually provide you this type of access when you need a professor in cybersecurity, a professor in IT architecture, a professor in data science, not just traditional people from the business. Okay, so this change in corporate university, in corporate learning requirements changed the whole landscape of the business. And I'm referring there to the emergence of corporate universities. So the first one was actually established in 1956 by General Electric. This is their campus. It's actually huge. It's near New York. But we see, very rapid growth in the number of corporate universities over the last decade. They build fantastic campuses. This is Boeing. This is Huawei. So just campuses that I actually visited. And they run their own portfolio of programs. And to give you an idea, on average, they have between 200 and 500 programs in their program portfolio. Again, they may vary in length and in depth, but well, this is how many they have. They have, they're specialists in learning design. So how to design a program for the needs of their companies. So they understand the strategy of the company, they understand its operating model, they understand what each of the business units might need. Well, they learn, they run learning needs analysis just to establish where they are right now with different teams. So this is their specialism. Quite rarely they have any instructors as part of their team. In most cases, they actually they work with the academia to bring, top talents from academia to actually design the content of the programs and to deliver these programs. So this is way, way more common nowadays. And well, just to give you an idea where you can probably look for some best practices of corporate universities, there is an accreditation system. By the way, the same accreditation body that accredits top business schools. It's exactly the same, UFMD. So our business school here, in which we are located, it has one of the top accreditations. It's called ICRIS. So there is a similar accreditation. It's called CLIP for corporate universities. These are just some examples of corporate universities that receive this accreditation. Well, I also have a slide with links, so you can actually follow it later and just find which universities are there, what exactly they do. And well, I guess you'll find some fascinating stuff. There is also a professional community for corporate learning people, corporate university people, again, some examples of that, and professional development programs, which are accessible also for academic people. Okay, so just talking in general about this landscape of the corporate learning, what kind of skills are in demand nowadays in the system? What skills that, we may probably provide as academic people. The corporate learning system normally considers, potential roles that you can play, because, well, it can be that you can be in 2, 3 different roles, not just necessarily in one. Well, the first and probably the most obvious for us, provider of cutting-edge knowledge and expertise. So you are contacted, or you contact them, it's up to you, to deliver cutting-edge, knowledge, let's say, on ethics in relation to AI, or on data science models in a particular area, or Internet of Things and how it can be applicable to whatever technology that might be. And well, in this case, your value proposition, what you need to demonstrate probably is, of course, academic or policy publications and experience of working with companies, working with companies in R&D area. So another role, professional instructor on transferable skills, coacher, trainer. So ability to customize your training, so courses and experience of providing training for different audiences. So I'll come back, to that in a second. So learning experience design. Well, this is a new, a name for a program developer. So again, academic people are quite often program developers. So in this case, the most important quality probably is, customer relationship management. So again, you need to understand what your customer actually needs, and probably even do root cause analysis. Because in some cases, you are asked to deliver a specific program, and you'll find out that, well, in reality, they've got a totally different program. So the problem might be with their corporate culture rather than, a particular team dynamics or whatever. Okay, so, and well, another thing that, you should be able to do is manage faculty to deliver value for a specific client. And this is the toughest job, I should say. Because if you deliver a complex program like we did, for instance, here the Imperial Executive Education. And well, I guess we had around 20 people, faculty members of Imperial involved in this program, just to align them around how they should present, their modules, level of engagement, interactions that they should demonstrate. Make sure that, well, there are no repetition, in the material. It's a huge job, and, well, I guess, we are kind of qualified for it as academics because we do it on a regular basis. And, well, online resource, learning resource creator, well, just to mention, there are numerous opportunities nowadays to create courses for MOOCs, or learning platforms. Probably the best example of that is Udemy. So unlike Coursera and TEDx that work mostly with organizations like universities or big brands, companies, Udemy, you can actually just, design and deliver your own course, place it there, and, well, people basically vote for the quality of your course. So Udemy, because of this business model, well, currently is much bigger, by the way, than Coursera, by their revenues. Okay, and finally, a learning business partner. This is a person who can actually build the whole learning system for a particular company or for a particular division inside this company. So in this case, I would say the key capabilities that you need to have is understanding of business strategy and operating model, to make sure that you actually deliver something that might be helpful for the business. And this is the case when you understand the strategy, what's going on inside the company, and you proactively come to business and say, okay, we see gaps in skills, knowledge, whatever. This is how we can actually overcome them. So we do not, wait until, business will tell us what kind of programs exactly they want us to deliver. So talking about, different types of skills that are in demand nowadays, I mean, in corporate learning, it's way beyond, business skills. Business skills are there, obviously. So their list, is a bit, longer nowadays. It includes things like ESG, sustainability, traditional soft skills, including, diversity, inclusion, communications, leadership, technology skills. Again, they're needed for everyone, not just for technology people or for IT guys. So I guess, all people in company needs to know and, to be able to do something in technology at a certain level. And recently, more and more companies separate cognitive skills into a different category from soft skills. Why? Because, it's super important for them to be competitive nowadays. So problem solving, how fast you can actually do it, how detailed you can do this, how can you do it in teams, which is a big problem. Decision-making techniques, critical thinking, creativity, huge demand for creativity trainings nowadays, I should say. And learning to learn, also part of the story, by the way. Learning to learn after you graduate from the university, to be able to cope with this amount of trainings. And, well, just two final points. All these skills normally presented as a competency model for a particular company, and this is just an example of the most common model, I would say, used by many corporate universities or corporate learning functions, so-called T-shaped model. T-shaped means that you have deep expertise in your area. So this is done for technology functions. So this is for technology people. You have, a vision, a level of awareness of all technologies that, well, can be implemented into a particular company. So some consultancies, for instance, Accenture, for instance, they have technology acumen, I guess, 20 modules, different modules in the technology acumen, from cybersecurity to quantum computing. Then you can deep dive into your professional expertise, and this expertise might be actually different by career groups, like IT architects, developers, testers, and so on and so forth. But on top of that, all people should also have, some business skills and some soft and cognitive skills. In addition to that, this is not the end of the story. Some companies provide a wide range of personal development courses. This is mostly for attention because they are not job related. They are to make, people happy, not just happy, but give this, a feeling of self-realization, so to say, to people. So from parenting to creating, communities, well-being can be here. And the last, slide, which we discussed with Michael a lot, actually to summarize, what do we mean by value proposition. And value proposition, probably is a summary of distinctive value that we can create. Well, at least, from our perspective, it's probably a combination of what kind of companies you can serve. Not everyone. So technology companies, small businesses, startups, or just, big companies in specific fields. Not everyone. Or probably you can serve companies with specific types of needs or challenges, like problems with their leadership team or skills for specific job factors. And in addition, to a customer profile, you should be probably very clear what kind of a role. So I probably have not mentioned all of them, all possible roles, but some of them. What kind of a role you want to play? So there was a slide about that. What is your area of expertise? And by area expertise, we do not only mean subject matter expertise, but also groups of skills that you can deliver and learning technologies which you might able actually to bring with you. And of course, the final component is experience, which is about past engagements and professional certifications, whatever. So probably if we put all this together, we can, find something which might be of interest for many, many companies, because again, growing demand for learning inside companies, and companies go more and more to the academia to meet, this demand for skills. So thank you, Michael, and I guess we are open for questions. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Igor. Let's both stand up here and you can direct any questions. We have, I think, a substantial number of people online as well. Do we have any questions online? Do we have any in the room? Stand there quietly.
I guess we puzzle people.
How would you first approach? So once you've decided this is the thing I want to focus on, and you seem to be my perfect kind of client, how do you then approach and decide who to approach? So if you, who do you know who to contact within an organization or?
Well, I can probably start. Well, Michael can add from his experience. Well, it's really a long-term investment, I should say. So first of all, of course, it's networking. So, and I would advise actually to visit, professional forums, organizations, seminars. Many of them are quite open. So you can be there and, just participate. But then, well, there are certain things how you can signal your area of competencies, like creating, short videos when you discuss, some advanced stuff if you want to be, a cutting edge knowledge, instructor or something. Or, just, produce videos that shows how, well, kind of an innovative approach, to some kind of trainings, for instance. Innovative, not necessarily, in terms of the content, but rather how you can scale it up, quickly, for instance, for the organization, or make it customized. Well, social media, very important, source of awareness about you, LinkedIn in particular. There are some groups in LinkedIn which, again, probably you should follow, and you can start with professional communities, find people who are there. So there was one of the communities in the center which is based on 2 universities, one in the Netherlands and another one in Spain, and they do a series of webinars with CLOs, chief learning officers of companies. So just look at the names there. Quite many of them are actually based here in London. and you can, try to establish a contact with them and, just be proactive. But it's a long story.
Thank you.
Should I answer that?
Definitely.
I mean, I would say similar things. Find nodes where people think of it as a long-term investment. Find nodes where people gather that are interested in similar questions. And it could be the senior people, the decision makers you're seeking aren't there, but it could be you meet the decision makers of the future, and in 3 years' time, lo and behold, lots of the Chartered Management Institute was great for me for meeting people. In rooms like this, I volunteer to give presentations and stuff. That's a good one. At the CMI, I gave a talk in the Gherkin, the actual building, and because there's a university campus in there as well. And lo and behold, a lot of those people have gone on to be promoted maybe twice in 5 years since then, and now have senior roles at various sectors because it wasn't a sectoral specific organization. And then be proactive, let's stay in touch, get a coffee, that kind of thing. But I would just say that the other, also find other people doing similar kind of work. You could consider them your competition. I don't know how to work that out, if they're your competition or whether there's essentially an infinite market growth so you're not competing with each other. I'm not sure. But meeting with people in similar kind of areas was very useful for me just to get some ideas in the first place. And I'm very grateful for them for their time.
Thank you.
Well, probably just on one point which I forgot. Of course, signal your interest to people at Imperial. Imperial is executive education.
Okay.
My most fresh example, yesterday we had, a follow-up session on pilot course that Sustainability Institute developed. They were absolutely sure there is nothing in executive education about sustainability, whereas I know that they run, programs for years already. So somehow people inside Imperial should know about your interests.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I would, Igor just showed the value proposition with various headings. I would sit down and actually write this stuff out. I mean, don't just think about it.
Yeah.
And do it 10 times for all the different ideas you have.
Okay.
And then modify it, come back to it 6 months, do it again. Modify it depending on what feedback you've had from various people and so on. And also the planning of what can I go to and so on. It's deliberate about it. Question there.
So when you for example, talk to someone, would you have to have a project in mind? Did you need to identify something inside a company, taking corporate consulting, for example?
From my perspective in this, building up a critical mass in a certain sector or certain important subject like technology or HR law or something, that would be cross-sectoral. So you would get to a specific, it sort of fits into the T-shaped diagram, kind of. Maybe I should develop a graphic for this, but to develop a meaningful critical mass, including knowledge within, say, 5 sectors, so finance, defense, retail, and so on. And then you can build on that and say, well, I can extend this and make it relevant to your organization and its requirements. That's hard because you've got to be doing work for free in order to prepare stuff, but there it is. And I would just say, again, with the T-shaped thing, you can just drill down into one sector relentlessly, like retail, but you should always keep a broader set of themes that you're keeping alert to. Policy debates, who's publishing the stuff, get on the mailing lists, that's always a good one. Get in touch with the research people who actually write the reports, because no one ever writes to them. Except in academia, where research is much higher ranked in the agenda, in professional agenda, right? People love it when you get in touch with the actual researchers because, they like the attention. Any online questions? Any more questions? Any points to add, Igor? Okay. Happy to finish a few minutes early. We've all got teaching, or some of us do, in an hour. Thank you all for coming. We hope that was useful. This will go on YouTube as well, and I'm sure it will take on a life of its own because, as I say, it's an under-researched sector. I really realise I'm becoming the researcher in this sector and look forward to developing that in some respect as well. So thank you for giving me a sense of a way to build on this, develop it. We'll all stay in touch with each other. We'll send, do stay in touch with us in particular because we're interested in this, right? Stay in touch with each other in the room because I know the people I know in this room have got interests in data science, anthropology, art again, music technology, English language, other languages, law, and then a bunch of people I'm afraid I don't yet know. So that's a lot of specialisms just in the room, and hopefully we could find some way of carrying this forward. Yeah, at the back.
which is, as you mentioned, art. I'm just curious, how would you imagine someone who has in-depth knowledge in art research and to, extend this expertise in corporate
Can you
consultancy?
respond to this? You'll need a microphone, is that okay?
Yeah.
So what I'm just going to do, because I'm less expert in this, I'm just going to pass you over to our new colleague, Martin Morris, who just joined us 2 months ago, who does exactly this.
So how do you apply those skills to consultancy?
Yeah, because I would imagine a lot. I think it's one of the biggest obstacles that I've been trying to overcome as well. Because my background is in art research. I actually graduated from one of your the neighboring school, Royal College Bar, actually. And then I encounter obstacles when I'm trying to provide like design consultancy or creative consultancy for small to medium scale enterprises. And they would question, so you don't really have a business background, so how are you going to provide consultancy to businesses?
I approach lots of companies, and the medium-sized ones, they never seem to latch on. And so I just happened to go to a massive company, a massive ad agency. I managed to get into a room with somebody and said, I can make you see differently in 10 minutes. I just blagged it. And so then but if you've got a knowledge of a skill in the arts, the thing seems to be the creativity idea that's being spoken about is that they don't understand their creativity that's inherent in the individuals in large organizations. And so large organizations and creativity are generally split between those who are trying to be creative and the people who manage the money, the accountants.
Yeah, true.
And they live in different worlds. And so what Ogilvy did, who I work with, they found it beneficial just drawing pictures and studying art because it allowed their accountants to understand what their creatives go through. So when they were signing off budgets, it allowed them to say, well, this is worth the risk. It was about a risk-reward factor.
Right.
But then there's also the thing of the arts are much maligned. I'm from the Royal College as well, so I learned all this at the Royal College.
Right.
And noticed at the Royal College that within art practice, what I teach is drawing. Drawing isn't used in the way it used to be. But the side effects of drawing, the way that you see the world and you see connections between things, are vital for any business. And it was only the big companies that latched on. All these smaller companies I've gone to, it's been a nightmare.
Yeah.
I've done stuff for free, I've lost contacts, but Ogilvy, they put the money into it. So it's about finding a business that understands that the importance of creativity to their model.
Thank you, Martin. Absolutely excellent input there on art and make it relevant to big organizations. Yeah, they might just have the margins to be able to play with stuff like this, whereas a small company tends to, if they only have 5 people,
cost effective.
They'll take stuff for free. I promise you, free products and so on, but maybe not a big sort of contract. Any other final points before we finish? We've got 1 or 2 minutes left. All good on the online space?
All good.
All quiet in the Western Front, as they say. Okay, on that. Okay, well, final point we got from an anthropologist. Off you go, Elizabeth.
My experience has been the other way around in that what happens if someone approaches you for some knowledge that they know that you have and you've gained it as an academic. So the consultancy came to you and then you'd pack because you've got no idea about contracting, the stuff that you began with, costing, time, legal issues, so I wondered if are there professional organizations that you can get independent advice from, like the nuts and bolts of how you have a contract, how do you respond to somebody saying we've got a gap and you've got this knowledge and we want your knowledge, it's useful. I then didn't know how to develop a work proposition.
Yeah, a statement of work. Yeah, there will be. I'm just trying to think because it wouldn't be the Management Consultants Association. Because again, it's the smaller ones tend to fall through the cracks. What's it called? There's the Institute of Entrepreneurs that do provide things like legal advice. The Institute of Directors used to have an entrepreneurial stream that did this. I know because I used it many times. I think that may have shrunk for whatever reason over the years since COVID. I would just find there's got to be nodes where people are helping people develop small entrepreneurial approaches to anything and will enjoy the challenge of a particular creative sector and would relish the challenge of doing this. Have a look around at the different organizations and see what they think. And then, there'll definitely be something that will help you develop it that bit further. Yeah. But start now and develop a critical mass over time rather than waiting for like an emergency. Yeah. Any other final points? We've got a clock off otherwise. Okay, well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for coming in. I think this is going to be the first of something and look forward to seeing how that develops. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. Cheers.